Hello and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, and with the Nina Guardian Sports Editor, Shane Brophy. We're here with you every Wednesday, talking all things Tipperary first and foremost, but also we'll bring in any bit of GAA we can. Not to mention
we're so short at the moment. Jesus Christ, it's unreal.
Yeah, but with Tipperary, can you think of a more disappointing year overall for Tipperary? Footballers gone, also gone from the Tailteann. Hurlers gone good and early. Camogie team are up against it. Ladies footballers have a very, very tough group and maybe down a couple of players from last year. It's not exactly heady days for Tipperary this year.
No, I was thinking even in the mid-noughties when we were struggling at senior hurling and football, the Camogie team and their great run to 5 All-Irelands in 6 years, they dragged us out of the mire. But God, this year there's maybe, apart from the minor hurlers, realistically our last chance to win an All-Ireland, and they'll have a very tough semi-final against Galway, I think, on Saturday week. But look, it was encouraging last weekend to see that our development squad team win the Celtic Challenge to beat Galway very comfortably in the final. So I suppose it just shows you that development squad team would have been probably numbers 30 to 60 in the county. So it just shows you that maybe we still have the talent pool there. It's bringing them through after minor seems to be the issue at the moment.
Yeah, I never doubt the Tipperary have the talent, pulling it together and honing the talents and maybe the S&C stuff and all that. That's the thing. The one, and we'll come to it in a while, but it's a great year potentially for clubs in Tipperary because, as you were saying beforehand, you're involved with Laura Dura there. This is the first year that you really have your county players back good and early. I'm sure you've Brian Hogan and Bonner Maher in there the whole time. But that's the case for clubs across the board, which is very exciting for a lot of these clubs now. And even the managers, I think Burris Lee and Shane O'Neill, he's now got an opportunity to, it's not like the olden days where he has to wait another couple of months and all of a sudden he has to try and find a way to, where will I put Dan McCormick in this team, for example. You have it now good and early. You can work it through the league games and get things set nicely for championship. Across the board, that's the same for everyone.
Oh, it is. And look, it's not going to be like this every year. Look, there will be years when Tip will pick up. They will. And Tip will go deep into the championship and you'll be just more or less going straight from inter-county into club. You'll have no challenge match. You'll have maybe a couple of weeks to wind down before you build yourself up. So look, you just got to take the rough with the smooth. And I suppose with Tipperary in senior hurling and senior football having struggled this year, look, it's the clubs that will end up benefiting. As you say, we've had Bonner and Brian with Laura training for the last couple of weeks since Tipperary lost to Cork, and look, unlike other years, they probably will be able to get a couple of challenge matches into them before the championship starts. So you'll be able to feel your way. Okay, where's our best team? As you say, maybe previously you're more or less throwing it back in, and throughout the championship, or you're feeling okay, maybe he'll go better in another position. So look, I suppose there was always going to be a winner and a loser in the split season from one year to the next, and I suppose look, it's the clubs will take the benefit from it. And for this year, look, hopefully it's not going to be the case every year, particularly in the short term, that maybe the next couple of years we'll be going deep into the championship before club starts.
Yeah, we'll talk plenty more about that as the show goes along. We should talk about the Tipperary Camogie team. I was in Semple Stadium on Sunday, and I suppose Tipperary were chasing from pillar to post against Waterford, eventually losing 116 to 13 points. Just a little bit off throughout the game.
Yeah, and I think it's the story of their championship. You just seem to be off at a small bit in all their games, even going back to the Munster Championship. They're just, whatever reason, the spark has gone out of them for some reason, whether they primed themselves maybe a lot like Waterford's hurlers, did they go too hard for the league, and just the edge doesn't seem to be there. All the slickness and all the quickness and seemed to be with Waterford on Sunday. I watched the game on the Camogie YouTube channel, and look, geez, but for Anya Slattery making a couple of great saves in the second half, it could have been a more comprehensive defeat as it was. I think Tip got a couple of points laid on to dress up the scoreboard to look a little better, but they're a long way off they were the last 2 years when they got to All-Ireland semi-finals. And look, while they're not out of the running to get to the knockout stages, they're up against it. They have to win their last 2 games away to Wexford, which is tricky now. Like it was
Big
Wexford beat Clare, and more importantly Cork in the last game. Like Tip's record against Cork in recent years is pretty poor.
Yeah. Like I was looking at that Waterford team the other day, and they had a lot of threats all over the field.
Yeah.
But like Beth Carton, who's been there a long time, and Niamh Rockets, someone I've interviewed a few times, she had an awful lot of injury issues over the years. But yeah, she was very good as well. And interestingly, afterwards, WLR-FM, they interviewed Brianna O'Regan, and I suppose she brought up in the interview that it was going to be the day after was going to be 16 years since she lost both of her parents and her sister in a house fire, which is obviously devastating. But that was on her mind as they were holding out Tip late on. But from a Tip point of view, I just thought trying to force goals late on, it just wasn't happening. Cueva Maher got a couple of nice points. Mary Ryan getting sent off obviously wasn't great. It doesn't help the situation either. But like, if you look overall this year, I know Karen Kennedy was named this time out, but with Karen Kennedy getting injured, Orlo Dwyer being in the AFL, and Roisin Howard's suspension, overall, it just hasn't really panned out brilliantly for Bill Mullaney either.
No, there's no doubt about it. And I suppose there was pressure coming in this year, because when you lose 4 semi-finals in a row and you're getting so close, you think, God, you think, you on one hand, you think the motivation is there, that you're not far away, the breaks will come, but then there also could be the bit of pressure that weighs on you, that God, all these defeats start to I suppose put them under pressure, and then of course the other thing is, if you're chasing the big three, you forget maybe the teams behind you are probably chasing you, and there's no doubt about it that, look, over the last few years when Tipperary were getting to semi-finals, probably Waterford were probably the team that were closest to them, and there was a couple of tight games there over the years. I suppose it was, in some ways, Waterford were probably due in some ways, and they were just better, they were just sharper, they were just quicker. There's just no doubt about it. I would have seen this Tip team a good few times in the last few years. They're not playing up to their usual level. Maybe apart from like Cueva Maher, I think she's been excellent since she came back from. She wasn't on the panel for the last few years, but in contrast, like Cát Devan would have been the real leader in the attack. She's struggling for her best form. Arena Friday was only started the last day. Like, she struggled to find her way into the team this year. Clodagh Quirke's only come back from the cruciate. So, and then there'll be a few, maybe some of the younger players that decided, Corinne Blair and more decided after the league that they were going to go to America for the summer. So that robbed Tip of a bit of I suppose quality young talent on the bench as well. So look, it has been a difficult year, but look, it's not quite over. Joint captain Julianne Burke in the Guardian this week, she's saying that she's defiant. They're not giving up. They'll fight this to the end. And look, if they go down to Waterford or Wexford and get the win, look, you just never know. Maybe one win might spark them into life. Like, I suppose if you take in the 2 Munster games against Clare and the 3 games in Championship, they're 5 games without a win now. Like, that does eat away at your confidence when you're not able to get over the line. And look, to have a weekend off this weekend before they go to Wexford and hopefully just freshen things up, maybe get a couple of injured players back, and just hopefully maybe get that win. And look, if they get that win, then they can go to Cork and give it a real go. You just know Cork will be qualified by then, and maybe we'll put out a fringe selection or something like that, which maybe will give Tip a chance to sneak in. But looking at that group, it's wide open. Like, you have Wexford beating Clare, which would have been a surprise result, and like you would have said after the Munster Championship, that Clare were in great shape. Now they're bottom of the table. They've only 1 point out of a possible 9. So like, it's outside of Cork, it seems a very, very dog-eat-dog sort of a group. So you wouldn't rule out maybe Tipperary picking up form as the group goes on.
Yeah, and we've seen before teams going out against scratch teams in their last game being able to get a result. So, and hopefully that. Look, I mean, we're obviously hoping for a lot of things to go Tipperary's way, but sure. Look, we'll keep the fingers crossed. So we saw Liam Cahill being interviewed on TG Carr last Friday and talking about, I suppose I'll paraphrase by saying, get going again and put the shoulder to the wheel again for next year. How do you see that panning out? And it's so long, we're in June now. Yeah. God knows when the players will meet collectively again. I'm sure there has to be players meetings, player and manager meetings, county boards getting involved. Like, an awful lot can happen between now and the first training of the pre-season.
Yeah. I thought the timing of, I suppose the timing of, Liam agreeing to go and show a sport was interesting. Like I don't think he would have done it without knowing he was going to be asked about the Waterford situation. So I'd say he probably knew himself that, okay, if I'm going on, I'm going to have to sort of give an answer. Like it was, while it wasn't a, how would you say, why it wasn't 100% that he's going to stay. Like there's a fair, like I would have said a couple of weeks ago that it was 50-50 after the Clare match, whether he would or not. But I'd say maybe that there probably has been a chat with maybe him and maybe a few of the leading players that, okay, look, we'll give this one more shot. Like I'd say there's a fair understanding they got their timing all wrong this year. That just looked like they went heavy in the league, and then when they came to the championship, they were just a little bit. The edge was gone off them, and like it just that if you're not on it, 100% in the championship, you're in big trouble. And just there's no doubt about Waterford just seemed to get their timing a little wrong, and it cost them.
Yeah, I mean, in between the Limerick game and the next couple of outings, you hear all sorts of hearsay. It's very difficult to know what's true and what isn't, but that there would have been some heavy training in there, and maybe that explains somewhat a bit of a limp display against Cork. And then obviously, look, the stuffing was knocked out of them going into that last game against Clare. They were really dreadful. But I suppose a couple of managers from Tipperary who are still in the championship in the All-Ireland preliminary quarterfinals this weekend are Dara Egan with Wexford. He'll be coming up against Kerry. And then Antrim and Darren Gleeson coming up against Cork. It's very hard to imagine that these two games won't be comfortable wins for Wexford and Cork, isn't it?
Yeah, you probably think it's all like, okay, it's a... I think so. I think the fact that Laois upset Dublin 3 years ago is probably the warning that Cork and Wexford need, that, okay, we're going to go up to Belfast and into Tralee and do professional jobs. I suppose the one game, I give Antrim a sniff, but the fact that they play such an open brand of hurling will probably play into Cork's hands. It's probably going to be very high scoring, but I just don't see the Antrim defence being able to hold out that Cork attack. So that probably rules that out.
I think it's going to be a hammering. I agree with you.
But I think Cork. I think Antrim are going to score heavy. I think it'll be a very, very high scoring match. Like so, it's like I don't. Cork can't defend. Antrim can't defend. Antrim have decent forwards. Cork have good forwards. I think it'll be very high scoring.
I agree with you. It could be heavy scoring, but I'd say it'll be one-sided because I was at the Joe McDonagh final the other day, and I'm looking at the program here, and they're very good players. Like I think Antrim's hurling is exceptional. Like I think they have a lot of very, very tasty stick minutes. Maybe bridging that gap athletically a small bit, or just I don't know, whatever it is, exposure to that top level competition for longer and longer, because the hurling is definitely not an issue. Like they've great forwards, but then their midfield is two very attack minded players. I mean, maybe other people know more about Michael Bradley, but to me, he's a relatively attack-minded player. And I think Keelan Malloy is a very attack-minded player, even though he'll sit back at times. Like, they're going to have to really close that back door and ensure that Cork can't run through them, because if they do, it's going to be lights out. You're going to have...
You can probably see... I wouldn't be surprised if you see Neil McManus back there, probably more the half-back line of the week, just because his hurling brain will read the play pretty well. Like, so, like, Antrim will probably have to sacrifice a forward in this game, like, so to be like they can't let Cork. You can't, like, I suppose I'm not sure what the dimensions are of Corrigan Park. It doesn't look a huge field, so I think, and look, we have to say that the record up there of the last couple of years against the big teams has been pretty good. Like, I don't think they're
Wexford,
heavy beaten against anybody, even in this year's league when they ran Dublin and Waterford pretty close. So, like, I think Cork will win. I don't know if it'll be a hammer. I think it'll be competitive for a lot of it. Maybe, I think 7 or 8 points. Like, I think Cork, I think that could be the margin. I don't see it any more than that.
I'd see it being double that, I have to say. I mean, I would love if it was a really, really close game. As I said, I think they've got classy hurlers. They've good forwards. They've actually got good subs as well that came out and made an impact the last day. But I just can't see it, especially if you're conceding. What exactly was it? 4-24 against a Kerry team that... like, this is an okay Kerry team, obviously, but there's a huge gap here, and like Kerry are going to be up against. Like, if Wexford are going to Nolan Park and winning against a fairly battle-hardened Kilkenny team.
Yeah.
It's going to be very difficult. I actually thought it was quite interesting. I'm thinking about the two managers here. So Dara Egan and Stephen Mullumphry, who's over Kerry. 3 years ago, they were both part of management teams that were facing off in an All-Ireland semi-final. Yeah. Obviously, Egan part of Liam Sheedy's setup, and Mullumphry was part of Davy Fitz's setup as well. And here they are now. And to be fair to Mullumphry, like, he has that experience of being a selector with Liam Cahill in 2020 when they got to an All-Ireland final too. So they shouldn't be lacking for experience on the line here.
No, and I think, and it's his first year, and you think, okay, if he comes back, he's got a fuller appreciation of his team now, and like, he'd be thinking, so God, if I could get Jordan Conway fully fit next year and on the field for 70 minutes, like, I thought his 2 goals were brilliantly finished against, and like, I know people say, I mean, Ryan Elliott shouldn't be beaten from 21 yards before, but I thought he gave him the eyes. And he sort of placed it. And I thought the finish for the second goal, he was hooked. I just thought we know there's a lot made about Shane, his brother, but God, Jordan looks a classy player too.
No, they're not related.
Are they not related? I thought they were brothers.
No.
Yeah, just even the way he took his 2 pints, the way he made a yard of space to sell the dummy to get the defender off, and like, was brilliant. I just you actually think in some ways, like, Kerry have the pressure off of them now, like, was like, they've nothing to lose. Wexford, have they one eye on Clare? Will they rest? Would they take a risk on Lee Chin with his maybe more dodgy hamstrings this year? But you probably think after what happened against Westmeath, Wexford are forewarned. They will go down and do a professional job. They'll probably win maybe 9 or 10 points. Probably won't get out of 3rd or 4th gear. But I don't think Wexford will sell out completely this weekend. They can't afford to, like, with Clare probably the following week.
Yeah, well, considering they drew with Westmeath a few weeks ago, there'll be no elements of complacency. Now, to be fair, Westmeath are quite a good team, and they've showed it throughout the Leinster Championship. So I think they'll very much be gunning to get this game in the bag good and early. You know, try and get Conor McDonald, get him onto plenty ball, Rory O'Connor. I'd imagine Lee Chin will start, because and maybe if they can have it won good and early, then they can start to take off players, use their panel. Everyone then is buzzing in the couple of training sessions leading up to the quarter final. Like, is it doing a disservice by just assuming that this is going to be a victory? Well, victories for both Wexford and Cork. It's not an insult; it's just reality, isn't it?
No, and I suppose, look, we had it in 2019 where Laois beat Dublin, like, so. But then you probably had Dublin looking ahead. There was a couple of players rested that day when they had one eye maybe and playing Tipperary the following weekend.
Too.
So, I just wonder. I know when they were changing the structures, and I don't know if there's any need for these preliminary quarterfinals anymore. I think if you ask Antrim or Kerry or anybody in the McDonagh, what was the main prize for that year in the McDonagh? I think it's winning it and being in the Liam McCarthy the following year. I don't know if there's any value in having the 2 finalists playing off. I don't know what it does achieve. Like, I never understood the reason of linking it to the All-Ireland Championship when the structure was tweaked a few years ago. Like, so I think maybe now that the McDonagh seems to be a fully fledged championship in its own right, that it has enough without having the car. Like, do Kerry need this game after, like, I'm sure they'll have been deflated most of the week. Do they need this again after last week? I'm not so sure. Maybe there's more benefit in Antrim because they're the winning team. They're coming in and a bit of momentum, like, but I don't know. Does the link to the All-Ireland Championship with the McDonagh teams have any value anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I can, to some degree, I can see the winner staying in. Yeah, that makes, there's a bit of sense in that. But with 7 games left in the championship, 2 of them are this weekend. Nobody will be talking about either. If there's a shock, everyone will be talking about. But realistically, you'd rather see heavier hitters playing against each other this weekend. I mean, I know not everyone will like to hear that, but it does seem a waste of resources that this is, we've now the third, obviously Tipperary are very disappointed, but just as an example, this is the 3rd year in a row we won't see Tipperary against Kilkenny, for example. And obviously Kilkenny finished there, so they're always through to the semi-final. But there's matchups that will go by year after year that we won't see that would produce really good games. And you're just not going to see them. Even, I suppose, you'd have to say...
if you had, I don't know if you... Yeah, it's Yeah, it's. To be honest, I don't know if I'd wanted the year prolonged or Tip still in it anyway.
Yeah.
Board or going. I know there's a debate out there about whether does the championship need to go all Ireland rather than the two provinces. But I just think there's so much value. Like I would think if you're a Tipperary or a Waterford, if you can't get in the top three, you're not going to win the All Ireland in that year. And I don't care that maybe an inferior Wexford team is still in the championship. Like if you can't get out of Munster in the top three, you're not going to win an All Ireland. That's my take on it. And I think I'd hate to lose the rivalries like between the five Munster counties. I think you damage the championship if you had a cross. If you had 9 or 10 teams and you mix them up, jumble them up every year, like there's no rivalry between Tip and Wexford. There's no rivalry between Tip and Dublin. There is,
but that's
between
because they're
Tip
kept
and
apart for so long. Like because they don't get to play each other in do or die games or championship games. But look, I still maintain, do the thing, play Leinster, play Munster, have your final, merge the tables together, and get rid of the league. Everyone gets 10 or 11 games in there, depending on whether you have 11 or 12 in the championship. Pre-season competition goes on for a month. Let's spend the rest of the time playing competitions where people are actually interested in winning. Why are we wasting so much time at the league where everyone is saying, it's only the league? Where else in the world? What other sport would you see this in?
Maybe so. But God, if you realise halfway through the year that Tipperary are going over and you still had 5 more matches to play, you'd wonder. It's like, I'm not kicking Tip when they're down, but you do from an early stage this year that Tip are in difficulty, like so.
Yeah, but you're going to have to play for 5 or 6 months, be together for 5 or 6 months anyway. It gives you an opportunity to improve or give more players exposure or what have you. But just actually, in over the course of history, Kerry have only played Wexford once. It's 1-0 to Kerry. That was, at the same time, it was 1891 when Ballyduff were representing Kerry and Crossabeg were representing Wexford. But hey, they'll take anything. And they beat Tipperary in the Munster League, so you just...
I just see there's no... I'm pissed off unless they change their minds before the weekend. There's no GA Go coverage of the two preliminary quarterfinals this week. Like I'd pay the €10 to sit down and watch one of them on Saturday. It was like, I'm a hurling man. All those football matches this weekend don't really interest me an awful lot. Like I thought they're the you worry about and the GA like and just get bringing 3 Leinster, 3 West of Ireland counties to Dublin next Saturday to play football qualifiers. Fucking crazy, like so. I just not my language, like, but Jesus, and then charging them €30 in for the privilege, like.
Yeah. So we might as well talk about something that did get everyone fired up this week, which was Limerick beating Clare in the Munster final after extra time, 129 to 29 points. I have to say it was, after a couple of weeks of hurling not really producing too much of massive note, this kind of got everyone fired up again and just restored your faith in the sport, because I've been starting to think everyone's going to start playing possession hurling. It's going to be everyone hunting in packs. It's going to be cagey games with very few goals. And I know there was only 1 goal, but there was plenty of chances. What a game it was.
Yeah, like it needed it after the Leinster final being so poor on the Saturday night. Like it was so stop-start, so free-ridden. Like I don't know. People were blaming maybe the referee was blowing whistle, but there was a lot of holding and a lot of grappling in it, whereas there was more... I don't know, was there as much holding in the Limerick Car game, whether they were cute enough just to let go at the right time, and John Keenan was just prepared to say, as long as you don't go overboard, I'll let you away with it. Like, was just the pace of the two games was chalk and cheese, and the quality of it. Like, I'd say it's probably up there with the 2004 Munster final, that Waterford Cork Classic, and like I put it up there with I think that still the best hurling match I ever saw was the 2009 All-Ireland final to Kenny and Tip. Even though Tip lost it, I thought that was quality, epic physicality, quality hurling. I think this game was maybe there with it, maybe because there were so many wides in the game, maybe that took the element of edge off it. Like there was a lot of maybe aimless shooting, like scores that actually should have been gotten. Like, but look, the ending, the Tony Kelly sideline caught, the Gerard Hegarty goal, like it had so much goodness about it. Like,
yeah, I thought it was a fabulous game. Do you know what was interesting at the very start of the game? I don't know if they showed this on TV. I haven't had a chance to watch it back. But the parade. So the
I
players
noticed that
they never broke the parade.
There was a standoff there. Like, there's no way. I was thinking, like, did the Munster Council dictate the two teams stand there for the national anthem? And even after the anthem stopped,
they were still there.
Oh, as if, I don't know. It was there's a. You'd love to see the third part of the trilogy, and there's probably a fair chance we're going to get it. The only vulnerability will be that maybe Clare could get picked off by a Wexford. Maybe if 2 weeks be enough after the draining experience. But
yeah,
I think if Clare get past Wexford, I think they'll beat Kilkenny. Like, so. I just thought the matchups were it was the way Clare maybe ran the show in the middle of the field. But then I thought at half time we were worried Clare need to get more out of their full forward line. Limerick are not going to let them stay running amok in the middle. And of course, the longer the game went on, Clare still got nothing out of their full forward line. Finn, Mike Casey, and Barry Nash just completely dominant. Like, and I don't know, you can nearly hand out the three All-Stars to the three of them now. Like, I know Rory Hayes has had a great year, but I think Rory Hayes got skinned at the weekend. Like, it was a
Paul Flanagan's an All-Star nominee for me at the moment, without doubt.
But so Sean Flynn and Mike Casey are Rich and Barry Nash. Like, it's good luck picking that All-Star team this year based on what we've seen at the moment. Like, and then you're throwing Mikey Butler and Kilkenny. Like, and Jesus, there's going to be some big names not happy when the year is over.
Yeah, you can be sure of it. I just wonder, is there another level in Clare again? Because, they scored 29 points there, finished the game, I think it was 121 to 24 points. It was, yeah. Like, Tony Kelly with a performance for the ages, but like, you'd imagine there's a bit more in Peter Duggan, in Shane O'Donnell, whose finishing was a little bit off the other day, but he still contributed well. There's a little bit more in Galvin. I think there is a bit more in them, and you can say that Keane Lynch, he'll be back. Peter Casey will be available. Whether they hit the ground running is the other thing. And then Aidan McCarthy, I believe, he's been back playing in some training matches for Clare recently.
Yeah, Mark Rogers got 30 minutes there. Mark Rogers got extra time into him. Like, he'll be better for that too.
So will Shane Meehan. So is there more? There's probably more in Limerick. We've seen that, but is there more in Clare?
I think there is, because of the fact that Shane O'Donnell and Peter Duggan were peripheral players in the game and open play. And I just wonder did they get too psyched up for the game where they lost concentration? Like, Peter Duggan seemed to be frustrated by the grappling of Sean Finn. And then every time Shane O'Donnell got tackled or won a free, he was whinging to the referee. And I just thought, Shane, you're not concentrating on the game. You got your free, be quiet, stop. And he was sort of getting annoyed that there was no cards coming with it. We're being constantly fouled. But I was thinking to myself, this is the form of the Limerick full back line. They do grapple with you off the ball. This is coming. You either accept it and take the free, and you're playing into their hands where they're seeing you're getting flustered. And I just thought it took something away from Peter Duggan and Shane O'Donnell's game. Whereas if the next time they play, they know that's coming and they just accept it, you might get more from them in open play.
Do you think hurling's hitting a new level of physicality and flaking, I suppose, really? I mean, I can understand sometimes when players lash out, when players are dragging out of them, but, there's a reason that there's red cards and stuff like that as a deterrent from flaking. But when the rules aren't really defined and when players are getting, they're all trying to play on the edge, the referee has only one set of eyes, and you have 14 outfield matchups. I think it's very, very difficult for a referee here, and we're just going to have to accept that there's going to be a level of flaking if you want hurling matches like this.
That's it. Like, I'm loath to get too much in the John Keenan great refereeing camp. Is like, what happens the next day? Like, by the letter of the law, Peter Duggan probably should have gone the last day. Rory Hayes should have gone. Who else? Was there a couple of other instances in the match? But
there was a high flick on David Reedy's head. Was it Cahill maybe?
Yeah, like, what do you do? And I think there is something in it. If Gerard Hegarty did some of those, or Gillan did some of those challenges, would they be gone? They probably would be.
Well, recent evidence suggests they wouldn't be, because Gillane in the Tipperary game. He got away with that one.
Yeah.
Hegarty's, he got punished against Clare, but other ones he's gotten away with. So I'm not going to go saying poor Limerick either.
No. It's like the trouble is what happens the next time. What happens if the same players from Clare do it against Wexford or an All-Ireland semi-final? Why is it any different because they're playing Limerick and it's because it plays into a great game? I'm not so sure. Like and then you'd say there's criticism. But then your criticism of James Owens for being too whistle happy the night before. But then he was pulling for frees that were frees. Probably the only one he missed was the Keenan Fahy one, and look, he just didn't see it. Like, and if there was probably be interesting to see if there's Keenan Fahy gets pulled up for it because he wasn't actually booked. Just was he was booked, he get away with it. Like so.
Well, I thought that Kilkenny got a few soft frees, and the thing of running around, and as soon as anyone comes near you, you put your two hands up in the air, trying to draw attention to the referee. I'm about to get a free. John Keenan wasn't buying that.
No,
there was too many frees given handily to. I would say Kilkenny got too many handy frees. It was like 19 frees to 9 going into injury time at the end of the game. But the flip side is, in case people from Kilkenny are watching and think that I've got it in for them, is that I think that Galway could have had up to 3 red cards. Fahy, I thought Jason Turner got high shoulder, and then Mikey Butler had his face guard pulled.
I'm very surprised that I don't know. I had to come for the manager that did Shefflin's overthink this match and think we have to win the physical battle. Like Galway needed to be sent out to hurl that match. They had the better.
They don't have the players for a physical game.
Yeah, they didn't need to get involved. They need to open up the pitch as big as they could, get the ball into their ball players, and it was just as if they got sucked into a physical battle, or I don't know if they got sucked into it as if they wanted it as well. I think, but it was just the nature of some of their challenges. As if they were like the Keenan Fahy one was petulant, like that was nasty. Like, and it was the hit on Richie Reid just before that too. Like that was just an edge to Galway that suggested that they were mentally driven to be ready for the physical battle, of which maybe took away from their hurling, the focus on their hurling, which is what they needed to do. Yeah,
hard to see them recovering. And like I would imagine, assuming it goes along form lines, I could see Cork beating Galway, but I'd say it'd be a tight enough game at the same time. But my big thing with Galway is before they had physical players who throw it out to some to lads to knock it over the bar. Now those lads who are knocking the ball over the bar are expected to be the ball winners, and I just don't think that works for them, and a lot of them didn't really get on the score sheet other than Conor Whelan, who was
they're definitely the most of the 4 quarter finalists. They're probably the most vulnerable. You'd probably say Clare have shown enough in the Munster Championship. Like they lost the Munster final, but they lost they lost an epic, like, and like they couldn't have. They lost going down in their shields. They were brilliant, and look, I suppose they lost because in extra time a lot of their big players were off the field. Tony Kelly was gone. You tend to think if Clare can keep their big players on the field, that they won't be far away from it going forward. And look, that sideline cut was class. You just think of the small margins, the easy 30-yard free that Tony Kelly missed in the first half of normal time. Like they all add up at the end of the day. And I even thought, was it in the second half of normal time when Kelly had a chance, he took a point, but there was a half chance of a goal if he stayed going another 5 yards. Yeah,
that was extra time. I think his body was ready to go. I'd say he was like, I have to take a point here. My body can't stay going.
Yeah, but I thought at the time it was a strange call. I thought if Kelly got a sniff there, I think, okay, it's worth the risk here, maybe going under 2 or 3 yards, and at least there's probably a fair chance Nicky Quayle to save it because he's a ridiculously good goalie. But I thought it was worth the shot at that stage. But then as you said, it could have been a tired mind at that stage thinking, I just don't have it in me to or maybe afraid. He probably would have taken on that maybe goal chance maybe earlier on in the match if at a fresher time.
Yeah, and just to refer back to the Leinster final as well, I was talking to Eddie Brennan yesterday about the handshake gate. So here's what he had to say. Were you like the rest of us and full-time whistle, you're just watching to see what happens between Brian Cody and Henry Shefflin?
No, I went in to get a coffee. So
you're a liar.
Yeah, look, I think it was. I was there, and the whole place stayed to watch what was going on. And like I said, I suppose I'd love to have a lot more information to offer your your view on the whole thing and know exactly what went on, because look, there's bits and pieces out there. But just from a Kilkenny perspective, I'm disappointed to see that two guys like that, and this is what it has manifested into. I think the Salt Hill thing could have been put to bed Saturday night. If there's a quick, it doesn't have to be you're a great lad, I'm a great lad. It doesn't have to be anything like that. Shake hands and that's it. It's put to bed. The story is kind of killed. Whereas now, it's just, I think it has gone probably a little bit septic now at this stage, and you're going, it's very disappointing to see, because I've shared the dressing room with both those guys and nothing but respect for both of them. It's disappointing to see that.
For more, yeah. Did it bother you?
Look, in the greater scheme of things, it doesn't mean an awful lot. But I do think it's sad that like Brian Cody wouldn't have won as much as he had without Henry Shefflin, and Henry Shefflin wouldn't have won as much as he had without Brian Cody. And just to see the way things are, and it's probably all over. It seems you'd love to think it was down to something. You could say that's definitely the reason for it, but all it seems to me is that Shefflin had been asked in a few times to Kilkenny. He said no, and then Cody got in a huff because he decided to go to Galway, who are a rival to Kilkenny. That's the only play I can see in why there's anything between the two of them. And if that's the case, it's more coming from Brian's side. And I agree with Eddie. I just thought after the match, Brian Cody did everything possible not to. All it would have taken, go celebrate on the line with your selectors, go to Henry, shake his hand, and then go and congratulate your players. I just think he did everything but to avoid Henry Shefflin, if you know what I mean. And look, it's not a huge thing. It was like, but I think it's sad, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, last year, as far as I remember, Liam Cahill and Liam Sheedy shook hands. This year, we know that
there was no gripe between those two as far as we knew.
Liam Cahill, and he had obviously been in discussions to be tip manager and shook hands with Colin Bonner. Life goes on, and I get it. It was slightly different.
I think Davy Fitz and Brian Lohan shook hands after in Thurles last year after Clare and Wexford. I find it sad. That's I just find it sad. Like, two greats are, I wouldn't say acting, I think it's coming from one side more than the other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Speaking of actions on the field, and Tommy Dunn, there was that situation with Johnny Murphy during the Waterford game. He's taken his suspension case to the DRA, so he's obviously not letting it go.
No, I got that confirmed during the week from the county board. It's 7 weeks since that happened. He proposed 12 weeks suspension. People would think, God, what's he dragging it out for? He's not going to miss anything. But I think it's the principle of it all. And I believe the DRA hearing was heard last Wednesday, and there's been no adjudication result has come forward as yet. So I think it's a case of Tommy more or less accepting that. I think he feels his name has been blackened here, and that he's getting a proposed suspension above and beyond maybe than actually what happened. And if that's the case, you've got to say, Tommy, go right ahead. Why should Tommy accept? Why should anybody accept? It's all I've never, and I think some county board official has said to me, this could have serious ramifications for the sanctity of the referee's report. We all hear the referee's report is final, even though we know the referee is blatantly wrong. I think there has to be a recourse where a referee's report can't be gospel, even though it's wrong. I think, I don't know. It's
your word versus mine. There's no way of getting away from that.
There's not, but when the referee's word is clearly wrong, why should he be allowed to get away? Why should he be protected? Why it does feel that Tommy Dunn has been harshly penalised. Okay, why did he do Tommy for 12 weeks when he could have given him for 4? We actually don't know what Tommy said.
Yeah, well, this is why
I heard it wasn't a huge thing. So, why is he being done for was it 12-week suspension is threatening behaviour. What could he have said that was threatening behaviour? Seriously.
Yeah. But like, I suppose I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
We have to look at it from Johnny Murphy's point too and
Yeah.
say, well, maybe it does amount to it. But again, like, it's just a guessing game from us. I'm not kind of prejudging from either side, just playing devil's advocate on both ways. But yeah, it's ugly enough stuff.
Interesting to see now, and if the DRA do come down on Tommy's side, what does that mean for referees going forward? Right, when their referees reports will just like, and we see, there's no point in saying it otherwise. It's damaged Johnny Murphy, because I think Johnny's only got one championship match since then. And then he goes Galway against Dublin. This time, I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's even got a. He might have got a McDonagh Cup match, but that's if he's done 2 championship matches as a referee, he's done a lot of linesman jobs. But if he got, that's all. It'd be interesting to see whether he gets a. I don't know if the referee appointments have been confirmed for this weekend yet, or the quarterfinals, whether he's penciled in for any of those. Like, but that game has harmed him as well, because he hasn't refereed as many matches as the rest of the guys have.
Yeah, there's plenty of matches in the County League coming this weekend. So is there anything in particular that's jumping out to you?
I suppose this is the fact that we're at the finals and we're only a couple of weeks away from club championship. I see in the South, they're actually playing South Intermediate Hurling Championship this weekend, so they're getting going. Like, I suppose the fact that the county leagues they've gone pretty well this year. There's been very, very few walkovers conceded, which was the problem over the last few years. Like, I suppose my disappointment is that there's no promotion or relegation in it. Like, there should be a way where maybe an intermediate club, if they do take a league seriously, can go from maybe 4-3 to 2 and maybe mix it with the stronger clubs and play a good level of hurling. Like, so, and maybe there should be a way of penalising senior clubs who don't take the league seriously, whereas, okay, you're going to gradually get relegated and you're going to be having inferior quality. Well, I won't say inferior, but you're not going to be playing teams of the standard that you'd want heading into senior championships. So I suppose it's interesting to see that Clonolty and Drummond have ended up in the final. Clonolty, Declan Ryan is in there this year. He guided Clonolty to All-Ireland Junior B glory earlier in the year, so he's in there. And I suppose Timmy Hammersley is not there anymore. He's transferred up to Ballyboden, Dublin. So, and like, for them, okay, you'd say he was their maelstrom for a long number of years, and that, okay, it's only league hurling, but like, it says a lot about the unity within that club to say, okay, next man up, we're building here. And like Drummond probably last year had a poor hurling championship, but I always thought they had better talent there than they were showing, and maybe like they won a county minor championship 2 years ago, so like they had young players, so it's about filtering them in there, and I think they'll be one to look out for in the championship. Look, we have a brilliant group there. We have Drum, Borrisley and Thurles, and the one group with Templederry in the county championship. Like, that's serious. You have the one. I'd say, if you drove from Templederry to Thurles, would it even be 10 miles? Like, you have 4 teams within 10 miles spread of each other. Like, so that's going to be a great group. Like, so I think one thing, it's great that the 1 and 2 finals are in Semple Stadium on Saturday evening. It just adds a bit more to it as well, a bit of prestige. And I think if they add promotion and relegation next year, it'll only add to it even further.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm looking at some of the big names that might do some of the damage this weekend. Yeah. Wondering, how is Seamus Callanan going? Obviously missed out on the Munster Championship due to the hand injury. Dylan Quirk, he's obviously had plenty of exposure with the county this year. Will he be leading the line for Clonolty?
Yeah, I was talking to somebody this morning that Dylan has received a 2-game suspension off something that happened in the county league semi-final against Toomevara. Now, I haven't had that confirmed, but like, that wouldn't be good for, if that's the case. Like, and he would be a big loss for Clonolty if that happened. But then I did hear that Seamus Callanan was very, very fresh and eager for the fray when they played Borrisley a few weeks ago in the semi-final. I'm sure, look, after a difficult year, I'd say he'll be looking forward to this club championship more than others. And I would have seen my own clubman Patrick Bonner-Maher when he played against Ballina in the Division 3 semi-final a few weeks ago, and you could see he was fresh and like having sat much of the year on the bench for Tipperary. And you'd like to think there'd be certain players who would be relishing this club championship coming, that because they got so little chance for Tipperary. So maybe others maybe they'll find it difficult feeding their way up again. But look, I would have seen Ballina in that very same match Michael Breen played, and there'll be maybe a lot of lads just maybe delighted to have gotten away from the Tip years over, and I think the clubs will actually benefit from it, because they'll think, oh, it was just a difficult year. I'm going back in my club. I'm going to look forward to this. And look, we've had 2 brilliant club championship years in Tipperary between all the grades, and I think the fact that Tipperary had a tough year this year, I think those county players will be looking forward to going back in where clubs are. And I think we're going to get a very, very good club championship again this year, because those players will be looking forward to. I suppose they'll feel, look, I'm back in with. It's been a difficult year. I can back in with who I know, and hopefully, if we get a good run, that I'll be able to play to my potential. Whereas there's very, very few, you'd say, those county players may actually play to their potential. Maybe Craig Morgan, Dylan Quirk, or maybe you'd be expecting, they'll have kicked on, and that's what's Cahill too. Like, how bad was his hamstring injury in that Cork game? Like, and you'd like to think he'll have gotten a decent chance to recuperate, and he should be okay for Holy Cross when they get going in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I'll just run through some of the fixtures this weekend then. The County Football League Division 3 is St. Patrick's against Killinall. The Hurling League Division 3 is Ballina against Burgess. County Hurling League.
Yeah, these hurling matches are all finals, so they are.
Yeah. County Hurling League Final Division 2, Aero Gannacarty Donahill against McCarthy Burrs. Division 6, Knockshigowna and Thurles Gales. Division 1, as we've already talked about, Clonoulty against Drummond-Inch. The Division 1 football final, Ballyporeen against Clonmel. And the Division 5 Hurling League, Clonoulty against Upperchurch Strumban. The one thing we haven't talked about, I suppose, this week, unless you want to make a further point on that, do you?
No, I think the leagues are much maligned in Tip. I just point to the Division 6 final, Knockshigowna and Thurles Gales, 2 clubs that they're so small. Like, they're at Junior B level. They're unlikely to win a Junior B championship. So, like, this offers them a chance to win a bit of silverware and say at the end of the year, God, we won something. Our year was worth it. And I just think everything can. I've always thought that not everything should be put on championships. There should always be value for a league where some club might get something out of it. And I think Knockshie and Thurles Gales would definitely get something out of their final, even though it's only Division 6. But like, this would be huge for them.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, it's good to have competitive games in this sort of weather.
Yeah,
and at this sort of weather as well, like, players should be buzzing going out to play. Some of these games are at Semple Stadium this weekend. Final, something on offer. What a glorious day to play these games.
And all those teams will, especially the winners, will carry some momentum into their upcoming championships as well.
Yeah, no doubt. The Tipperary ladies footballers, they're playing their way to Mayo this weekend. Dublin game coming down the tracks as well. Very, very difficult start to this campaign.
Yeah, it's a tough group. Like, they're in with Mayo, Dublin, and Cavan. Like, and I always look at Meath and think a Tip beat Meath in the 2019 intermediate final, and seeing where Meath have gotten to, you think, God, if Tip had a bit of luck with injuries and no Aussie rules, you think, how good could Tipperary be too? Like, and like, it's just you. If you had Aisling Maloney this year, you think, oh, you'd have some chance, but like, she's such a quality forward. Like, but I think for Peter Creedon in his first year, it's about maintaining their senior status again. And like last year, they stayed up on the last day, beating Tyrone. Unfortunately, this year 2 teams are being relegated, because there's 13 at senior level, so they have to get it back to 12. And look, they're in a group with and even if they do end up maybe winning the match against Cavan, I think it's the bottom Tip. There's 13 teams in it, but Tip are in the group of 4, and there's 2 groups of 3. But the teams that finish 3 and 4 in Tip's group will end up in relegation. So, like, unless Tip shock Mayo or shock Dublin, even if they beat Cavan, they're probably going to end up in those relegation playoffs. Like, so, it's tough. Like, Mayo are good, or Dublin are so good. Look, you just hope they're competitive. Maybe in the first 2 games, get to Cavan, maybe win that, and take some momentum into those relegation playoffs. Like they suffered a heavy loss to Kerry in the Munster semi-final a few weeks ago. They had a tough Division 2 league campaign as well, so just about stayed up there. So it's going to be tough. It's about, I suppose, blooding more players and hopefully a bit of survival too. So like that ladies football championship is so tough at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Okay, that's it for the show. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the Nina Guardian. It's out now. Shane, we'll do it all again very soon.
Talk to you later.